Lyndon Johnson, raving like a madman, states that we had the power to control the Earth's cloud cover then in 1962. And he says, and I quote verbatim, "He who controls the weather controls the world." That is the bottom line. That's what this is about.
Now, and then my guest Dane Wigington joins me. Guys, put that little clip, when this finishes, put that little clip in my Twitter video. And then also, when you do that, find the 60-second clip of Barr and Trump that we were rolling all day that we need to play again here, and put that in my Twitter folder too, so I can put that out. Okay, thank you. All right, just doing some, taking care of some business here live on air, folks. Teleprompter free, script free, and that's just how we do things. So sometimes we have to air our dirty laundry just to get things done, but that's how it goes, and it just got done, and I hope you had as good a laugh as I did at that. All right, Dane Wigington. So yeah, let's try to get serious now. I mean, we talk about cow farts in the environment. I'm not sure what that does to the environment, but you might have more of a clue into that, the emissions that come from a display like that. But Dane Wigington joins me from geoengineeringwatch.org. The audience wanted us to get you on, all the great work that you guys do at Geoengineering Watch. And so there's a bunch of news to get into, and I'm going to put about 3 or 4 things out there, and then you can decide which one you want to knock out of the park. We do have some interesting weather happening, kind of in the Midwest and North, where temperatures are going from really hot to really cold. Of course, everybody then cries climate change, but that has nothing to do with climate. That's just weather. You also have flooding happening in the Midwest. The big thing that I think made Geoengineering Watch famous and on the map when it comes to the truth movement is all the news that you guys break, or just the images that you guys capture and compile over there of all the geoengineering, which is what the aerosols in the sky and everything like that, which is also an interesting thing to follow just in general. But I was also informed by my crew that you guys are enduring some censorship of your own right now, which does not surprise me. So Dane Wigington from geoengineeringwatch.org, take it away, pick up the ball, and dunk it home, whichever one you choose.
Oh, and thank you for your willingness to address this most critical issue that too many are not yet aware of. In regard to the censorship, yes, we're the largest website in the world on the subject of geoengineering, 33 million visitors, nearly 33 million. 4 months ago, Google completely deleted our website from the top of the first page under a search for geoengineering to being completely gone, completely deleted off their pages on that subject. So yeah, the censorship's occurring for us as well. In regards to the whole climate issue, Owen, this is what our position would be, and I don't think anybody can rationally deny this. How can we have any legitimate discussion about the climate from any perspective while omitting the climate engineering elephant in the sky? And this is where, again, from any side of the fence on this issue, there can't be a legitimate discussion about the climate without discussing climate engineering, aka solar radiation management, which all of the climate intervention programs, Owen, are weather warfare when we boil right down to it. So in regard to Winter Storm Wesley, which is occurring right now, absolutely engineered top to bottom. We know that the moisture is being chemically nucleated. It's a process called chemical ice nucleation for weather modification. These are patented processes that go back over a half century. We have multiple sources of testing for the snow. We're taking snow tests right now in Minnesota. In fact, we've already noted, and Weather Channel just announced, some of the snow is coming down. It's colored. Some of it's yellowish. Some of it's brownish. We know that
now this is actually so key. I want to just pause you for 1 second, because this has to do everything with the censorship. It's like you said, Google erases you from their search results because you guys are doing the real research. And just like they want to have all these information battlefronts, climate change is one of their biggest lies ever. So people that search for it and they find out the truth, where you're actually doing the test, you're showing the images, you're showing the video, you've done the research, you've found the documents. And so what do? Well, they just erase you. And so now, and here, because this is my big thing too, it's like, exactly, how are you going to sit here and claim man-made climate change or any climate change at all, but ignore the geoengineering that happens? Now, you guys have the in-depth, really tip-of-the-edge coverage of the geoengineering, but it's even mainstream news now. I mean, you can go search any news outlet. China admits to weather modification. Russia admits to weather modification. I mean, even in the West, they're talking about blocking out the sun now. So I mean, this is all out there. It's like a total checkmate for anyone that wants to argue man-made climate change and ignore this stuff. So, I mean, to me, that's the big censorship issue. But get back into the testing and what you guys are learning right now. This is the stuff that geoengineeringwatch.org does, folks. What you're learning right now about this winter storm.
Well, this is, again, we've known the chemical ice nucleating elements are in the snow, Owen, and we are identifying more elements all the time. For example, surfactants. This is an element that affects the water molecular tension in water molecules. It makes the snow extraordinarily slippery. Or you see it in rain. Oh, and many people have noted foaming rain. And this is, again, part of surfactants that we know are in the mix. So we're constantly identifying new elements that we know are part of the climate engineering mix. And in regard to the engineered winter events, this is critically important to understand. Events like Winter Storm Wesley, which is occurring right now, being hyped up by all the media. It's exactly the kind of headlines that climate engineers like. The Chinese government openly announced that they were creating engineered winter weather events. Fox News and Popular Science covered that. I encourage your listeners to actually look that up. Chinese scientists create artificial snowstorms. So it's imperative to remember that geoengineering is a human activity. So even if we look at just geoengineering and we ignore any other form of human activity that might affect the climate, how can we have any legitimate discussion about the climate without addressing this issue first? And Owen, the environmental groups, I'm sorry to say, are behaving with extraordinary hypocrisy by ignoring the climate engineering issue and attempting to address the climate situation. And that's extraordinary hypocrisy. And we know that they're afraid of losing their 501c3s. That's why they're not addressing the issue. Our attorneys, we have a legal team, we're suing the US and Canadian governments, but our attorneys have communicated with attorneys from environmental groups like Greenpeace, Sierra Club, World Wildlife Foundation, Earth Justice, and they're simply not willing to address this single greatest, most damaging factor related to the climate of all. And we find that extraordinarily hypocritical.
Yeah, I'm not sure even how to properly analyze that, because it's the same frustration that I have with people that want to sit here and debate man-made climate change with me. And I say, fine, let's talk about man-made climate change. There's planes that spray aerosols in the sky and dump it on our country. All over the world, this is happening. Oh, conspiracy theorists, those are condensation trails and all this garbage. It's like, so it's kind of like the same frustration. Oh, you're a environmental activist group. Okay, that's great. You want to protect the the kangaroo rat. You want to protect the silverfish. You want to protect the whatever. Okay, good for you. Fine. You want to get the plastics out of the ocean. Okay, yeah, we're here. Let's get the aerosols out of the sky. This is affecting our organic environment. Let's take it. Oh no, we don't want to talk. So it's the same frustration. How do these people do these mental gymnastics, Dane? I mean, where is their logic and reasoning?
The mental block is extraordinary. The programming is extraordinary. But if we look behind the scenes, Owen, for example, let's take 350.org, Bill McKibben, a huge global warming centered organization. Where's their funding coming from? Rockefeller Foundation. So is it any wonder that they won't address the single most destructive factor of all? I'm not saying the only factor, but if we have a factor that is an intentional intervention of Earth's climate systems on a global scale, how can there possibly be any legitimate discussion about the climate or the state of the climate without addressing that first and foremost? And if we look at the overall damage being done by climate engineering, Owen, it's extraordinary. It has disabled the planet.
And really, I don't even know if we can properly measure it. I mean, who's ever done any tests on geoengineering before? It's one of the first, I think, mental blockades that people can hurdle. If you can just somehow get them to take the leap. Because it's happened to me before. Most people just don't think about it. I know that that's weird to say, but it's true. Most people just see the lines in the sky and just don't think about it. They're just used to it, or they just, I guess, never studied, atmospheric science when they were children, and so they don't know about cloud formations or whatever, but they just genuinely just don't think about it. I can't tell you how many people, just by me pointing it out and saying, hey, that's weird, I've gotten to say, hey, that is weird. And then like a whole thing clicked in their head, like, wow, people are spraying something in the sky. So it's really not a hard mental hurdle to leap, but for some reason, some of us out there can't make the leap. And so that's why I bring the expert Dane Wigington on. Dane, you were just breaking down some of the science that you guys are discovering right now when it comes to the winter nor'easter that's out of season and that has been forming and dumping on the North and Midwest. And I know that also you have a situation with censorship. We've got you for one more segment, Dane, so I just want to make sure that you get everything out you want in this segment. So if you want to get into the censorship, go ahead and get into that. But if you want to finish with your studies and everything you're learning about this winter storm, you can go ahead down that road as well.
Let's start with this, Owen, if I can. Let's talk about for a moment the contrail lie, and perhaps the contrail lie that being the greatest deception ever perpetrated on populations around the globe. We are not seeing condensation in our skies. We know that all military aircraft, all military tankers, military tankers and all commercial aircraft are fitted with a high bypass turbofan jet engine. That's a jet-powered fan. 90% of the air that moves through that engine is non-combusted. That engine by design is nearly incapable of producing any condensation trail except under the rarest and most extreme circumstances. And Owen, at geoengineeringwatch.org, we have up-close photographs of retrofit nozzles mounted on the aircraft pylons, which aim right into the exhaust jet stream to make this look like, quote, condensation, which it is not. We have up-close photograph or film footage of these trails being turned on and off. You can't turn condensation on and off. This is not condensation. This is a particulate dispersion, just like what you see at air shows when they're spraying smoke out the back end. The stated purpose is to block some of the sun's incoming thermal energy. But Owen, this type of climate engineering amounts to weather warfare, period, end of story. That's what we face. And the impact against the U.S. population is no different than that of populations around the globe. So bottom line is we are inhaling everything they are spraying at altitude. I want to drive this point home. It takes an immense amount of material to block the entire horizon with this white, cobwebby, dirty-looking haze. Much of this material is toxic heavy metals, starting with aluminum. Now, I'm not guessing, I'm not theorizing, I'm not hypothesizing. We have lab tests from around the globe to prove this metal is raining down through the air column. We know it's not coming from China. We have California Air Resources Board studies to prove that. We know aluminum is the primary causal factor in Alzheimer's, dementia, and a long list of other neurological diseases. So the bottom line is, Owen, here's the question. If we're inhaling these particulates with every breath we take and there is no place to hide, is that not a fight for life? Should this not be a priority issue for us all?
Well, and most of what you've said is even admitted, which is kind of another weird frustration about this too. They admit the aluminum in the aerosols, the lithium, the barium. Like you said, there have been tests done on soil. In fact, there was a former lady who worked for the Army, Kristen Megan, who did her own studies because she was in charge of the actual chemicals that the Army would have surplus of so that she could make sure they were disposed of properly. And she found out they were being disposed of in the atmosphere. So there's all of this stuff that's already on record. And again, you try to bring this to people, they just cast you off as a conspiracy theorist. But I mean, I won't put my opinion out there. I'd like to hear the expert's opinion. Why do you think this is going on? Do you think this is a big test? Do you think this is a part of something more dark and sadistic? I mean, why do you think we're getting chemically sprayed? Do you think they're trying to protect the environment from what they think is global warming? I mean, what do you think is behind this, Dane?
Let me make this as clear as I can. There is no benevolence in the climate engineering operations, none. And if we look at the most concise definition of why those in power would want to control the climate, let's look at the film footage of President Lyndon Johnson from 1962. Any of your listeners can look this up. They can see it on any of our geoengineeringwatch.org weekly global alert news broadcasts, where Lyndon Johnson, raving like a madman, states that we had the power to control the Earth's cloud cover then in 1962. And he says, and I quote verbatim, "He who controls the weather controls the world." That is the bottom line. That's what this is about. It's not benevolent, again, in any way, shape, or form. And unfortunately, again, back to the hypocrisy of the environmental groups and organizations, even when credible geoengineering data is posted on their websites, their blogs, it is typically deleted immediately. Is that not the epitome of hypocrisy for those who claim to care about the environment? So the bottom line is, the way we move this issue forward is to share credible data from a credible source and to stick with this simple mantra, Owen. There can't be any legitimate conversation about the climate from any perspective without acknowledging this issue first and foremost, and there can't be any legitimate discussion about geoengineering without discussing the engineered winter events like what is happening right now with Winter Storm Wesley, which involves patented processes of chemical ice nucleation for weather modification. This is not a natural event, period, end of story.
Well, let me give a reverse angle to the benevolence that you talk about. If there was any, they would be using weather modification to rain on areas that are in drought to grow crops. They would be moving rainstorms to avoid flooding and destroying levees and dams. They would be using it to stop massive hurricanes, which actually they have before. So there are ways that they could be using this science and technology for good reasons. Now, they're not saying they do any of that, but let me go down a dark road with you here, since you said that the Lyndon Baines Johnson quote, "Whoever controls the weather controls the world." Well, as far as I can tell, it's China that's hitting their own people with weather modification. Russia's hitting their own people with weather modification. They admit it. The United States government or whoever is hitting us with weather modification. So then what? Then what drives that? Why would the leaders of some country want to be involved in a dark, sordid weather modification procedure?
I would argue that those at the top of the food chain, those who truly control global power, are not loyal to any country, any nation. And I think we've seen enough examples to ferret that out. So we can speculate about the agendas and the overall objectives being carried out, but the fact that these weather events are completely tainted with climate engineering operations is inarguable. It's absolutely inarguable. Let's take the fires that happened in the U.S. West Coast. It didn't just happen in the U.S. West Coast. It happened in Sweden, Finland, Norway, Canada, Alaska, Siberia. So we know that ionosphere heaters, and this is another aspect of climate engineering that must be understood. These particulates that are sprayed in the atmosphere are manipulated with extraordinarily powerful radio frequency microwave transmissions, and everyone knows how harmful that is. They're much more powerful than the communications transmissions. So we know that they can create a high pressure dome. It's called the ridiculously resilient ridge in the West, and they can literally cut off our precipitation as long as they want. They can do that in any region of the world, and they are doing that. So
now I want to pause you right there, because this is all available at geoengineeringwatch.org.
Yes.
You guys are still on Twitter at GeoEngWatch. You have a YouTube channel. But in the final 2 minutes here, you guys are facing some censorship too. So before we let you go, where can people find your stuff? Where's the safest place to go for your stuff? And what do people need to know about the censorship you're enduring?
Certainly, if they go to a different search engine, Owen, for example, if you go to Bing or DuckDuckGo or there's other search engines, we are at the top of the first page, as our ranking should put us, with a search on the geoengineering term itself. So we're available there. And if you go to just the geoengineeringwatch.org, and it's imperative to type in geoengineeringwatch.org. If you put geoengineering.org, you will come to a pro-geoengineering website. That's not what we want. So geoengineeringwatch.org, we make our materials available, our downloads, so people can print their own flyers, their own. We have booklets. We make that material available at our cost for producing and shipping, so we can get them into circulation, because we're having to rely more and more on our printed materials because we're being censored so heavily on all forms of social media. I want to stress to all your listeners how powerful they are if they get credible data. It's so much more effective, Owen, than pointing at the sky and just going into a diatribe, if you will. To share credible printed materials is exponentially more effective. But we are already communicating with Air Force generals, 2 of them, former government scientists. We're communicating with some of these people that have the ability to help us bring this to light. And we're working on a lot of other arenas as well. But it's going to take all of us, Owen, to bring this issue to the forefront. And again, I'm very, very grateful to InfoWars, to you, for your courage in addressing this issue head on. Thank you.
Well, absolutely. And I'd even like to just get you scheduled as a monthly guest. If you're willing to do something like that, we'll have the producer set it up just for a monthly segment with you, because we need to keep tabs on the censorship that you're enduring, and we need to continue to give you a platform. I mean, we can't have all your great work be deplatformed, so we want to give you a platform here. Dane Wigington from geoengineeringwatch.org, thank you so much. We'll be right back on the other side, ladies and gentlemen.